On December 3rd, 2024, just before 10:30 p.m. local time, South Korea was rocked by a sudden and dramatic announcement.
저는 북한 공산 세력의 위협으로부터 자유 대한민국을 수호하고 우리 국민의 자유와 행복을 약탈하고 있는
President Yoon Suk Yeol of the Conservative People Power Party declared martial law, a move that threw the nation into immediate confusion and unrest. Within just half an hour, crowds gathered at the National Assembly, marking the start of what would become months of intense protests against his government. Tensions quickly escalated as confrontations broke out between security forces and demonstrators. By the early hours of the next morning, around 4:30 a.m., the martial law order was officially lifted. But calls for President Yoon's resignation or even his arrest filled the streets and social media alike. Over the following weeks, protests across South Korea grew both larger and more widespread, though some counter protests also emerged in support of President Yoon. This period of intense public demonstration continued until April 2025, when the Constitutional Court upheld Yoon's impeachment, bringing an end to the unrest.
204표.
Amid the protests, demonstrators found a uniquely creative way to voice their frustrations: whimsical parody flags. This flag is for the National Water Bear United. This one says Association of People Who Still Call It Twitter. The National Union of Tech Neck Workers. National Swifty Union. National Association of All Day Happy Day. Alliance to Destroy Elon Musk's Testicles with a Spinning Kick. Sans Undertale demanding the impeachment of Yoon Suk Yeol. Or consider some of these that transcends languages. These flags quickly became iconic symbols of the movement, blending humor, satire, and political commentary to deliver powerful messages. So, why parody flags? And what stories do they tell about this turbulent time in South Korea's history? Welcome to this episode of the Flag Chronicle. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating culture of protest flags in South Korea. We'll hear from the protesters who carried these flags and speak with experts to uncover the meaning and impact behind these vibrant symbols of resistance. Flags have long been important in Korean protests, traditionally featuring political groups and labor unions to foster solidarity and community. The playful parody flags that became prominent in 2025, however, are part of a newer, but not entirely recent tradition. A Twitter account called 123 Flags Archive, named after the date when martial law was announced, has been collecting photos of these creative protest flags, driven by a passion to preserve this unique form of resistance. Their motivation? They see something meaningful in people coming together, holding flags despite differing opinions, a symbol of unity and shared purpose. As an archivist, they want to make sure these moments aren't forgotten. They told us that these parody flags first appeared during the 2016 protests against another impeached president, Park Geun-hye. To keep things simple, Park Geun-hye was at the center of a huge corruption scandal that sparked widespread protests. As the demonstrations grew, authorities tried to suppress them. Supporters of Park accused the protesters of being paid or backed by shadowy groups. Some even suggested ties to North Korea. Police would question protesters at rallies, asking things like, "Who's behind this?" or "Who paid you to come out?" In response, protesters got creative. They started bringing their own flags representing fictional and often humorous organizations to show they were there by choice, not because someone else sent them. So, in 2024, this creative protest tradition was far from forgotten. One of the very first flags spotted during the protests, documented by 123 Flags Archive, was actually a revival from 2016. It was flown just 3 hours after the martial law announcement by a protester who rushed to the National Assembly. And the flag? It featured the character Shin Sato from The Idolmaster, reimagined as a socialist leading the National Virtual Idol Labor Union. From there, the protest flags came roaring back, bolder, sharper, and more elaborate than anything seen in 2016. Choi Jung-wang runs flags.com. That's flags with 3 A's, a website where protesters could submit their own flag designs to be permanently archived. On his site, he explains his motivation simply. Once this unrest is resolved, we likely won't see those flags anymore. Out of a sense of loss, I created an archiving website where the flags can continue to flutter online. Curious to learn more, I asked Choi to share his insights into the mindset of those who fly these flags. Why do the flags reference such a wide range of topics? And what do they reveal about the protesters themselves and the ideals they fight for? When it comes to who was protesting, a December newspaper estimate revealed that nearly a third of the demonstrators were young women, the largest single group. This marks a significant shift considering they made up only about 10% of protesters back in 2016. Many protesters told the Korean Times that this increase was largely driven by opposition to the Yoon government's anti feminist policies. In addition, LGBTQ plus youth also joined the protests, motivated by similar concerns about rights and representation. The second largest group in the protests were men in their 50s, which may be quite surprising since they're almost the exact opposite demographic from the young women leading the charge. Many of these men lived through South Korea's military dictatorships and martial laws during the 1980s, so their involvement and call for democracy carried a more serious, seasoned tone. Young men, on the other hand, made up only about 8% of protesters, the lowest participation rate. This group tends to be more conservative and less engaged with social issues. There's a lot to unpack there, but since it's outside the scope of this channel, we won't be diving into that topic here. And so, it was largely the young women in the crowd who were credited with turning the protests into something of a festival like atmosphere. Many of them are active members of various fandoms and deeply familiar with internet culture and humor. They brought personal touches to the movement, showcasing favorite characters, beloved works, and creative expressions. This not only helped unite them around a shared goal, the impeachment of President Yoon, but also built a sense of solidarity among people with similar interests. And just like internet fandoms, protests became a space where niche subcultures get to shine, which helps explain the wide variety of references on these flags. For example, Choi explained to me, there are probably far more protesters who have seen Marvel movies than those who have read the Korean web novel Be a Light in the Dark Sea. Yet, there are many more flags showing fandom for Be a Light in the Dark Sea than for Marvel. One protester we spoke with, known as Malaysian, is a fan of the Korean online game Mabinogi. They created two flags, one referencing the game they love, and another featuring a light stick and a flag, common gear for protesters, especially among the so-called 2030 women, meaning women in their 20s and 30s who are often highlighted in the media. About the flags, Malaysian shared that while they came up with the initial designs, the final versions were a true collaboration, crediting the community for shaping the spirit of the rallies. I wanted to show that when goodwill comes together, it can create something truly miraculous, they told me. Or take the example of Ha-gi, who flew a flag inspired by the famous opening lines of the ancient Greek epic, the Iliad, "Sing, O goddess, the rage." She adapted it to read, "Sing, the people, the rage." While carrying this flag, Ha-gi was approached by a middle-aged man who happened to be the head of the Institute of Western Classics at Seoul National University. The two struck up a friendship, bonding over their shared appreciation of Greek classics amid the protests. But aside from fostering community and the main goal of impeaching President Yoon, the flags carried messages that reached much further than that. Many expressed awareness of broader social issues, many of which protesters see as regressive under Yoon's administration. These included feminism, LGBTQ rights, labor rights, animal rights, youth rights, and solidarity with Palestine. This reflects a deeper concern among protesters that even after Yoon's impeachment, these important issues might continue to be overlooked. So, they used the protests as an opportunity to raise awareness and show support for these causes as well. And that's exactly what a protester, known by the online handle Bearot, is trying to do with their flag. It reads, Dongduk Women's University alumna in solidarity with queers, the solidarity against disability discrimination, and the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. As you can tell, it's not directly about impeaching Yoon. Instead, it reflects a more specific concern, namely a recent controversy at Dongduk Women's University, which faced backlash after announcing plans to go co ed. Some of the rhetoric opposing the change included transphobic sentiment. So, as Bira explained to me, their flag is a way of showing support for the anti co ed protests while also standing firmly for LGBTQ rights. Now, with all this talk about protest flags, there's one flag that's noticeably missing from our story so far: the Taegukgi, South Korea's national flag. To get the full picture, we need to cross over to the other side of the protests and look at the supporters of President Yoon. Once again, this brings us back to the 2016 protests against Park Geun-hye. Back then, a counter-protest movement formed, mainly made up of older conservatives who took to flying the national flag. The media quickly dubbed these gatherings the Taegukgi rallies. Fast forward to 2024, and the same tradition continued. Yoon supporters prominently displayed the national flag. But interestingly, there were efforts by the pro-impeachment side to reclaim the national flag. Both Choi and the 12-3 Flags Archive told me they've seen more of the flag on the protesters' side in recent months, although some still feel uneasy about it given its association with nationalism. One of the protesters we spoke to, Malaysian, came up with a creative response. They designed an older 19th century version of the national flag. Their hope is to honor Korea's past while making a clear statement against the current status quo and how the flag is being used today. On the side of supporters of Yoon Suk Yeol, there's also a noticeable presence of American flags, as well as flags supporting US President Trump and the Republican Party. This reflects a complex political dynamic rooted in the historical and strategic ties between South Korea and the United States, which have been especially strong since the Cold War. The US South Korea alliance continues to influence Korean politics significantly, for example, through the deployment of the US Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System to counter nuclear threats. Traditionally, South Korean conservatives have been more closely aligned with the United States, often accusing progressives of colluding with North Korea. However, as the North Korean threat has lessened in prominence, conservatives have shifted to portraying progressives as conspiring with China to undermine South Korea. Against this backdrop, a narrative has emerged framing the political conflict as one between conservatives aligned with the US and progressives aligned with China and North Korea. Yoon's supporters have adopted rhetoric and symbols from the US, particularly from the conservative camp who is perceived as standing up to China, not only to bolster Yoon's position domestically, but also in hopes of encouraging US intervention in Korean affairs. For example, the Stop the Steal slogan, originally a Trump campaign phrase alleging election fraud in the US, was appropriated by Yoon supporters when Yoon himself alleged election fraud as part of his justification for declaring martial law. Interestingly, some Yoon supporters have also been spotted flying the Israeli flag, likely in reaction to the Palestinian flags that sometimes appear in pro-impeachment protests, not as specific endorsement of Israel, but rather as a broader expression of opposition to the impeachment protests. To end on a lighter note, I asked some of the people I spoke to about their favorite flags amongst the thousands they've seen. Troy's pick was opposing flags representing introverts and extroverts. Just looking at the design of the flags, I could feel the completely different personality traits, they said. 12-3 Flags Archive highlighted one particular flag, not their personal favorite, but definitely a popular one in South Korea. It recreated a banner from the manga and anime series Slam Dunk. What made it really stand out, though, was the addition of LED lights, which caught everyone's attention and quickly made it a crowd favorite. Malaysians' favorite picks included a giant ribbon-shaped banner made from yellow balloons, yellow ribbons being a symbol of remembrance for the Sewol ferry disaster in 2014. This unique, non fabric banner fluttered gently in the wind, serving as a poignant symbol during the April 2025 anniversary of the tragedy. Another favorite was a parody flag transforming the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions into the Korean Confederation of Cat Unions. Malaysian remembered seeing that same playful flag back in the 2016 protests, and it left a lasting impression on them. As you can see, these flags create something of a vibrant cultural tapestry woven from the diverse voices, passions, and causes of the moment, yet all united behind a shared goal. Now that President Yoon has been impeached, Choi expressed his hope that many voices expressed in the square will be reflected in the political and social systems going forward. For him and the people we've talked to, these flags are more than just symbols of protest. They are a testament to the resilience, creativity, and unity of the people, a reminder that even in times of unrest, community and culture continue to thrive. A big thank you to 12-3 Flags Archive, Choi Jung Wong, Malaysian, and B-Rot for sharing their insights and expertise with us. If you're interested in more news about flags and want to dive deeper into vexillology, be sure to subscribe and visit our website at flagchronicle.com for the latest updates. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.